You held a full criminal trial today for a text that got read and never answered. No courtroom, no jury, just you replaying the scene as prosecutor, judge, and only person in the gallery. 90 seconds and you declared them guilty on all counts. And you'll convene another trial tomorrow because your brain runs 200,000-year-old software. That software can't tell a stranger's frown from a death sentence. First, you need to know what scientists saw when they watched a brain get snubbed in real time. It explains every midnight replay you've ever suffered. But the bigger shock is what your audience is actually doing while you perform for them. Miss that and you'll keep paying rent on a stage you never needed. Start with the wiring. For most of human history, the tribe was life support. Rejection wasn't embarrassing, it was fatal because exile meant exposure, starvation, or something with teeth in the dark. Evolution responded by installing an alarm that files disapproval under mortal danger. Researchers proved it with a simple game of catch where players quietly froze someone out. The brain regions that lit up were the same ones that process physical pain. A cold shoulder and a broken bone ride one road. So the next time disapproval lands like an injury, name the machinery silently as smoke detector, not fire. Except the alarm is only half the trap because the other half feels incredible. Every nod, like, and laugh pays your brain a microdose of dopamine tied to food and money. That makes approval a slot machine in your pocket. Worse, the winnings can't be stored. Praised at 9, starving for it by noon because the bucket has no bottom. Run tonight's audit and count every adjustment you made for invisible judges. Count the opinion you swallowed, the safer outfit, the louder laugh. That number is the staff you employ for free. Now, meet the people you've been paying. They are not watching, and they never were. Psychologists call it the spotlight effect, where you overestimate the attention on you. Everyone else is the anxious lead in their own show, scanning for judgment of themselves. The waiter forgot you mid-shift, and your coworker is replaying their own meeting. The crowd you fear is a room full of people facing the other way. So, when the late-night trial convenes, demand evidence of an actual person delivering a verdict out loud. Almost always there is none, so case dismissed. So just stop caring right now is not the answer. You cannot willpower off an alarm evolution spent millennia wiring in because trying only stacks shame on fear. The real move is a century-old idea called the separation of tasks from Adler. Whatever anyone thinks of you happens inside their skull, shaped by their fears, history, and breakfast. Their task is theirs, and yours is to act on your values and walk. A simple phrase can help. Let them. Let them think it and let them misread it. But the engine is the half most people forget, which is let me. Here is the practice. When you feel the clench, take 2 breaths, repeat both halves, then take one action that is yours. You were never on trial. You just kept showing up to court. The theater has been empty all along, which means the performance can end tonight. The living can start now. $800,000 in debt. Unemployed at 41. Awake at 4 a.m., doing math that seemed to end only one way. That was the rock bottom of a woman whose voice now reaches millions. And the order of those 2 facts is the most important thing you'll hear today. Because the career didn't happen instead of the wreckage. It grew straight out of it. By the last line, you'll have a reason to go get rejected on purpose this week. First, you need to see the con your own brain runs every time you imagine a no. Researchers caught it red-handed and the numbers are embarrassing. But the darker discovery comes later. Your fear of rejection has a job, a secret one, and it's been collecting a salary for years. Start with Mel Robbins in that bed, covers pulled up, certain her story was over. It wasn't over. It was in the basement of everything that came next. History repeats this pattern so often, it's nearly a law. Abraham Lincoln's business collapsed under a debt so large he joked about it like a national one. Then he lost elections, got passed over, buried a son, and fought a darkness his friends feared might take him. And he kept walking into the next attempt because he'd grasped what rejection actually is. Weather, information, a comma. So here's your first tool. After any no, finish one sentence. So now a comma demands a next clause. Write yours within the hour, except the no itself was never the real problem. The real problem is the half second after. 2 people lose the same job offer. One writes, wrong fit, next application goes out Friday. The other writes, I'm the kind of person who fails, and never applies again. Same event. two opposite lives, built entirely from the sentence each one added. The event is fixed. The meaning is authored by you. So catch your half-second draft and edit it for accuracy. That was about the role, it was never about me. Because every rejection is about a thing, a fit, a moment, and your brain instantly inflates it into a ruling on your entire being. Pry those apart and most of the venom drains out. Still, your brain fights back with loaded dice. It runs a prediction engine called affective forecasting, and at forecasting pain, it is comically bad. You overestimate how much a rejection will hurt and how long the hurt will last, consistently, measurably, every single time. The dread is a car alarm shrieking over a falling leaf. So run a survival audit tonight. List the 3 rejections you once feared most that already happened. Beside each, write what it truly cost long-term and what it quietly freed you for. The pattern will startle you. Then why do you still flinch? Because the fear is useful. As long as you're afraid of the no, you never have to try at full strength and risk being found wanting anyway. Avoidance protects a fantasy. I could have if I'd really tried, and its salary is your unlived life. The unsent application leaves no scar, which is exactly what makes it lethal. A bruise heals and teaches. The question you never ask simply vanishes, uncounted. So this week, collect a no on purpose. Request the discount, the meeting, the chance. Somewhere refusal is likely. A no leaves a bruise. The unasked question leaves a hole. Every rejection is data about fit, which makes it the fastest route to where you actually belong. Go get told no. It's the cheapest education on earth. After Abraham Lincoln died, his staff opened a drawer that should have wrecked his reputation. Inside were furious, surgical, devastating letters addressed to generals who failed him and rivals who savaged him. Not one of those letters had ever been mailed. That drawer holds an entire protocol for handling criticism, and by the end, it will be yours. One letter was written in the days after Gettysburg in 1863. Lincoln was convinced General Meade had let a beaten army slip across a river and let the war continue when it might have ended right there. So he wrote the demolition with every blunder laid bare in language that could never be unsaid. Then he folded it, filed it, and mailed nothing. The fury got a destination that was not a human being, and leadership kept its judgment. All while the press called him a baboon, a tyrant, and worse, and he governed anyway. Your first tool is his when a criticism burns. Write the full, unfiltered reply with every savage word, and then send nothing for 24 hours. Heat needs an exit, not an audience. Next, know why the burn gets so hot in the first place. Your brain runs a negativity bias where threat is weighted more heavily than praise by design. To your ancestors, a missed compliment cost nothing, while a missed threat could cost everything. So the wiring grabs the one cruel comment out of 100 kind ones and replays it at 2 a.m. 10 warm reviews evaporate by lunch, and one cold one moves into your head and unpacks. Not because it is truer, but because your alarm system overcounts danger. So when the loop starts, answer it with arithmetic, remembering that one voice is not a census. Which raises the harder question, what about the criticism that is actually right? Weigh the source before the words, because there is the arena, and there are the cheap seats. The critic who has built, risked, failed, and tried again often offers hard word that is gold, so lean in. The one who has risked nothing comments from the bleachers where every opinion is free. Marcus Aurelius ran this math better than almost anyone by writing notes to himself, because the real fight was never with their words, only with his judgment of them. So interrogate every critique with 2 questions. Has this person done the thing? And is there one usable grain inside? Keep the grain and flush the silt. Tempting then to go deaf to all of it, but a wall blocks the gold along with the garbage. You want a valve? Not a wall plus one final lens that changes everything. Most criticism is a confession. The sneer at your ambition is often somebody's abandoned ambition talking. The mockery of your joy is hunger wearing a smirk. They are describing in code a trade they made and regret at your expense, so hear it that way. And let compassion start to crowd out the fear. So, the complete protocol, feel it, fully write it. Send nothing for a daypan for the single grain act on that alone, and let the river take the rest. And if nobody criticizes you at all, check your pulse, because a life with 0 critics is not a lived life, it is an invisible one. Arrows are the tax on doing anything that can be seen, pay it gladly, and keep building. Researchers told people their advisor had a financial conflict of interest, and the people followed the advice more, not less. That result sounds insane until you feel the mechanism from the inside. The same invisible force decided half of what you agreed to this week. There is a precise name for it, an 11-word sentence that beats it, and a half-second drill that catches it mid-air. The name was coined by Sunita, a physician-turned-researcher who lived the pattern before she measured it. Raised as the daughter of immigrants where being good meant being agreeable, she became a doctor along laid rails. She noticed intelligent adults nodding along to recommendations they privately doubted. They said yes while every honest cell voted no. She called the force insinuation anxiety. Refusing someone implies they are wrong, biased, or untrustworthy. Implying that to a face feels like an accusation, so you swallow the no to avoid the insult. You do not comply because you are weak. You comply because dissent feels rude. That is why disclosure backfired in the study. Once the bias was admitted, refusing meant signaling, "I think you would exploit me." First tool, when you feel the yes forming on its own, label the pressure silently as anxiety, not agreement. Except this wiring did not appear by accident, it was installed. Every childhood compliment for being easy, good, and no trouble was a tiny lesson to surrender your preference. Run that program for 30 years and it stops feeling like training and starts feeling like personality. I am just accommodating is often a script with your name penciled in by someone else. Countermove. The half-second gap, one breath before any answer, one question, do I want to or am I afraid not to? You do not have to change the answer yet. Catching the reflex is the victory. Meanwhile, each fearful yes is also paying you chemically with warmth and avoided friction. The bill ships later, resentment that compounds in the dark and exhaustion you cannot explain. That resentment is not a character flaw, it is your buried integrity knocking. Quick diagnostic before any yes. Is this for their actual good or for my image? Kindness can afford honesty. Niceness cannot. While you are choosing nice, your yeses are drafting a contract. Every automatic yes teaches people what to expect from you as always available and limits negotiable. Then the day you finally hold a line, they react like you tore up a signed agreement, because from their side you did. So the fix is not just refuse more. A bare no delivered raw feeds the very anxiety that trapped you. The clean version is 11 words. I cannot make that work, but thank you for thinking of me. No essay, no apology tour, no 5-paragraph justification that reopens the negotiation. Deploy it once this week on a request you would normally absorb and let the silence afterwards sit there. The discomfort of a no lasts about 90 seconds, while the resentment of a false yes compounds for years. Every fearful yes to them is a quiet no to you, and you have been choosing the expensive option your whole life to dodge the cheap one. Would you have kept your seat on that Montgomery bus? Careful. Nearly everyone answers yes, and the research says most of us are lying. Not to me, to ourselves. Under ordinary pressure, ordinary people fold. We sign the form we doubt, laugh at the joke that isn't funny, swallow the objection in the meeting, and rehearse it bitterly on the drive home. The distance between the hero you imagine and the complier you practice being is the most expensive gap in your life. And closing it doesn't require a bus. It requires a Tuesday. What you'll hold by the end is a corrected definition of one word and a staircase that makes courage mechanical instead of mythical. First, though, the flattering story has to die. We picture defiance as rare, loud, and historic. A fist in the air, a lone figure facing a column of tanks. And the picture is convenient because it excuses us at dinner. Of course, I defy real injustice, we tell ourselves, while declining to challenge the relative who said the cruel thing 8 minutes ago. The grand image becomes an alibi for the daily fold. So tonight, run the honesty drill. Name specifically the last moment you went along against your values. Don't fix anything yet. Just name it. No one closes a gap they won't admit exists. Then a compliance researcher rewrote the dictionary. Defiance correctly defined. Acting in accordance with your true values when there is pressure to do otherwise. Watch what that single sentence changes. Defiance stops being rebellion's twin. The reflexive no is every bit as enslaved as the reflexive yes, both steered by the pressure, merely in opposite directions. And its true opposite was never peace. It's compliance. the quiet, socially applauded surrender of your values, whenever holding them costs something, which means defiance doesn't live on monuments. It lives at kitchen tables. So before any pressured decision, run the values check. If zero pressure existed, what would I choose? The distance between that answer and what you're about to do is the exact size of the surrender. And shrinking it will cost one specific thing. A face will fall, because you cannot be fully yourself and fully approved of at the same time. Choosing your values will disappoint a real person, and your chest will clench right on cue. That clench has a name, insinuation anxiety, and a lifespan. It crests and passes like every feeling you've ever survived. Now the part nobody says out loud. The honest no is a gift, the managed yes is a debt. A pleasing performance hands them a counterfeit version of you and quietly bills them resentment they never agreed to pay. Disappointment delivered honestly is one of the most real things you can offer another person. So tomorrow you torch every obligation on your calendar? Absolutely not. That's the heroic fantasy again, wearing new clothes. Courage is procedural. It's a staircase climbed one rung at a time. The first small values-aligned refusal terrifies you. You survive it, and the second one shrinks. Each rung deposits evidence your nervous system cannot argue with. This week, climb once. Decline one obligation. State one unpopular preference. Hold one small line and let the discomfort crest and pass. Then run the math that settles everything. Discomfort is paid once at the boundary. Resentment is paid daily, forever. Disappointment is the receipt for a life that's actually yours. Keep the receipt. In 1571, one of the most successful men in France walked away from his career, climbed into a stone tower stacked with 1,000 books, and spent the rest of his life interrogating a single suspect, his own mind. Michel de Montaigne carved the case file into a ceiling beam. What do I know not, believe not, feel certain of no? He had grasped something it took science 4 more centuries to measure. And before this ends, you will have his test, plus the distinction that separates wisdom from fear. Because 2 voices speak inside your head wearing identical uniforms. One of them lies constantly, and you have been taking orders from the liar for years. Here is what Montaigne saw from that tower. The mind is a narrator, not a prophet. It tells you a story about yourself, you will fail. You always do. Who do you think you are? And it delivers fiction with the same confidence as fact. The feeling of truth is not evidence of truth. So his move becomes your first tool. Write the harsh thought down, inside quotation marks. I am going to embarrass myself on paper, in quotes. It stops being physics and becomes what it always was, a line of narration from an unreliable witness. Then ask the beam question, what do I actually know? Which leaves a mystery. Why does the lie feel so factual in the first place? The answer is asphalt. Neurons that fire together wire together. Every time you think a thought, you pave its road a little smoother. 20 years of I am not enough does not make the sentence true, it makes it a superhighway. The thought now arrives instantly, effortlessly, automatically, and you mistake that speed for accuracy. A lie rehearsed 10,000 times will always outrun a truth you have considered once. So flag velocity itself whenever a thought shows up fast and certain. Tell yourself fast means familiar, not correct, and demand its evidence the way Montaigne demanded his. Still, the harder problem remains, sometimes the inner voice is right. How do you tell the difference? Volume. Intuition is calm, quiet, and consistent. It says the same thing on Tuesday and on Friday. Fear is loud, urgent, catastrophic, and rewrites its story by the hour. We obey the screamer and ignore the steady one because we have confused loudness with authority. So run the 2 voice test on any inner verdict. Is this calm and consistent or shrill and contradictory? Follow the first cross, examine the second. Then maybe the cure is drowning the noise in affirmations. Skip them. Forced positivity is just more traffic on the old highway. The actual move is rerouting. Every time you decline to believe the rehearsed thought, you stop paving its road. And every accurate sentence you choose instead lays gravel on a new one. One more thing about those ancient beliefs, most were installed, not discovered. They arrived in a painful moment, usually in someone else's voice. So ask the forensic question, whose voice said it first? It is almost never originally yours. This week, pick your single, most frequent negative thought each time it fires. Answer it once calmly with evidence, not to silence it, but to defund it. Your mind is a narrator, not a prophet, and you are allowed to fact-check the narration. The certainty was never truth. It was traffic. Go build the new road. For 5 years of her childhood, Maya Angelou did not speak. After a trauma no child should carry, she went silent, convinced that her voice itself was dangerous. The woman who would one day deliver a poem at a presidential inauguration began as the girl who wouldn't talk. How that voice came back exposes the biggest lie in self-improvement: that confidence comes first. What's ahead? Proof that your brain literally pays you to retreat, and the order that breaks the loop for good. Keep waiting on a feeling and you'll wait forever, because the feeling is scheduled to arrive after the thing you're postponing. Inside her silence, something was under construction. She read everything and memorized poetry. She absorbed language like dry ground absorbs rain, completely, without yet knowing what for. A teacher finally coaxed her back by insisting on one rule: you cannot truly love a poem until you speak it aloud. Notice the sequence. The voice didn't show up first and grant permission. The speaking came first, shaking, reluctant, and the voice was assembled out of it. So retire the readiness audit and pick the thing you're not ready for. Shrink it to its smallest executable piece. Not launch the business, register the domain, not have the hard conversation. Send the text requesting it. One piece this week while scared. Except your brain will counter with a bribe. Every time you cancel, skip the room, or dodge the risk, your anxiety drops, and that drop feels wonderful. The relief is a payment, and you are being rewarded for retreating. Every escape trains your brain that escape works, shrinking your world one dodge at a time. So relabel the exhale. When you back out and feel that sweet release, say silently, "Payment received. Fear just got stronger." Then book the smallest version of the thing within 24 hours, because the cure runs on identical circuitry in reverse. Psychologists find that pep talks barely move self-efficacy. Mastery experiences build it. What builds belief is lived, undeniable proof of having done a hard thing. Act while afraid, survive, and your alarm system recalibrates on the evidence. Confidence is a paycheck, not a loan. It clears only afterward. So fake it till you make it? No, admit the fear and move anyway. Alfred Adler said you become courageous only by performing courageous acts. The alarm still rings during, and it quiets because you moved. This week, 1 rep before you feel sure. Send it imperfect and raise the shaking hand. Bank the evidence. That's the only currency confidence accepts. Readiness isn't a feeling that grants permission. It shows up afterward saying, "Oh, you could do that the whole time." 5 silent years built a voice that addressed the world, and your reps are building yours. The most dangerous moment of your life is the moment things finally go right. The promotion lands, the relationship deepens, the work starts working, and then quietly, almost politely, you torch it. You miss the deadline. You pick the midnight fight. You discover the entire house urgently needs cleaning at the exact hour your future needed building. From the outside, it looks like laziness. From the inside, it's the oldest mystery you own. Why do I keep wrecking my own life? The answer isn't brokenness, and it isn't low standards. It's a bodyguard, one you hired decades ago and never dismissed. Why willpower keeps losing to him, why you self-destruct after wins specifically, and the single question that finally gets him to stand down. Picture how the ground itself makes an obstacle. 2 tectonic plates press against each other, and the earth caught between them has nowhere to go but up, buckling into stone until it becomes a mountain. Your self-sabotage forms the same way. Your conscious mind holds goals: the promotion, the love, the finished book. Your unconscious holds needs: stay safe, stay familiar, avoid one specific old pain. When goals and needs collide, the unconscious wins quietly, almost every time. The obstacle was never in front of you. It's inside you, pushed up by 2 real forces, wanting different outcomes. So map your collision tonight. Complete the sentence, "I want underscore, underscore, underscore. But part of me needs underscore, underscore, underscore." Both blanks are true. That's the whole problem. Every sabotaging behavior is protection wearing a disguise. The procrastination shields you from trying full strength and failing anyway. The picked fight shields you from the vulnerability of being completely seen. The self-doubt keeps you off a stage your nervous system flagged as dangerous years ago. These are clumsy strategies, serving needs that are entirely real. which is exactly why white-knuckle discipline keeps failing you. You cannot bully a frightened part of yourself into silence. A thwarted need doesn't disappear, it changes costumes. Crush the procrastination and it resurfaces as perfectionism, busyness, or a conveniently timed crisis. So swap the only question you've been asking. Never again, what's wrong with me? Always ask, what is this protecting? Still, why does the bodyguard strike hardest when life improves? Because your brain runs on prediction, and prediction worships the familiar. Whatever you've survived registers as safe by definition. Your nervous system keeps a thermostat, a zone of identity it recognizes as home. Drift above it, even with wonderful things, and an alarm trips, too much, too visible, too unlike us. Sabotage becomes the lever that yanks you back to baseline. That's why people damage relationships precisely as they deepen, and spiral days after their biggest wins. Unfamiliar joy can read as danger. The fix is acclimation, not force. When something good exceeds your normal, stay in it 10 extra minutes before reaching for the relief valve. Let home stretch. So the endgame is declaring war on your inner saboteur? The exact opposite. Sit with the guard the way you'd sit with a scared child, not a criminal. Ask the disarming question and answer it honestly. If this actually works, the scary thing that happens is ____. Whatever fills the blank is the need he's been defending, and named needs can finally be met on purpose in daylight while you keep walking. This week, catch one act of sabotage live. Don't crush it. Thank the guard for his service, then take one small step forward anyway. The wall you keep hitting isn't proof you can't. It's the exact address of the part of you that's afraid to. And a wall made of you is the best news possible. You'll never have more access to any obstacle on Earth. The danger ended years ago. Relieve the guard. Gideon described a state worse than being hated. Lying awake at 4 a.m, unable to meet your own eyes. Not because of anything other people think about you, because of what you know about yourself. She put that idea in an essay on self-respect so piercing that people still pass it around decades later. Its central claim demolishes nearly everything you've been told about confidence. What's coming? The accounting error that keeps self-esteem fragile. Why applause can't fund the repair, and a 7-day deposit plan engineered so small that failure is nearly impossible. Didion's claim, stripped to its core, self-respect has nothing to do with the approval of others, nothing to do with reputation, admiration, or being liked. It's a private discipline. Accepting responsibility for your own life, owning your mistakes, and keeping the promises you make to yourself. It is built quietly, in the dark, and lost the same way. One small self-betrayal at a time. Now see why the popular alternative collapses. Praise is approval, and approval is a currency other people control. It is issued by them, withdrawn by them, any morning they choose. You cannot build a permanent self on a foundation somebody else owns, so change what you audit. Tonight, skip. What do they think of me? And ask the only question with a stable answer, what's my reputation with me this week? That question has machinery behind it. Every time you tell yourself you'll do something and then do it, you hand your own brain a piece of evidence. I follow through. My word counts. Stack enough of those moments and an identity assembles. Not a borrowed story about being special, but a verified track record. Self-trust that no one can revoke because no one else issued it. History's self-built minds ran exactly this engine. Abraham Lincoln assembled a legal education by firelight with borrowed books. Joan Didion kept her notebook, training her attention daily. Character compounds, learn, apply, repeat, in deposits too small for anyone else to notice. So mark yours. Each tiny follow-through, say the words, deposit made. Except the compounding also runs in reverse, and that's the part causing the damage. Every broken self-promise files evidence too. The alarm you set and ignored. The start you postponed again. The boundary that folded by Tuesday. Each one teaches your brain the opposite lesson. My word to myself is decorative. Years of tiny self-betrayals build a deep, accurate belief that you can't rely on yourself. That belief, not any outside failure, is where fragility actually comes from. The constant hunger for reassurance. The wobble under criticism. Run the stinging audit. Count the promises you kept to other people this week. Now count the promises you broke to yourself. That ratio is your real ledger. So, is this another habit hack? No. Habits are the wrong frame entirely. You're not building a streak. You're building evidence. The size of the promise never mattered. The keeping is the entire point, because every kept promise is sworn testimony in the case of you versus your own reliability. So here's the plan. Choose one promise so small it's almost laughable. A 5-minute walk, 1 page, 1 glass of water at dawn. Keep it 7 straight days, guarded like a vow to the one person you'd never let down. Because it is. Self-esteem isn't given, it's earned. By you, from you, on the evidence of promises kept. Do this and the 4 a.m. test changes. You look up and for the first time in years, you can meet your own eyes. There's a book that consists of one long argument. A furious young man climbs a hill to an old philosopher's door, certain his unhappiness is the world's fault. His past, his circumstances, all the people who refuse to understand him. He returns 5 straight nights to win the fight. And on the final night, he walks back down that hill free because he lost it. What convinced him is a trade you're offered every single day and keep declining. Freedom and universal approval are 2 currencies, and you can only spend one. Ahead, why being misunderstood is the price tag on a real life. The paradox that dissolves the loneliness objection, and the 2-word practice that makes the whole philosophy fit in your pocket. Night after night, the philosopher dismantles the young man's case. The cage, he argues, is self-built, and the lock is the craving to be thought well of. Follow the logic to its sharp end. To be free is, necessarily, to be disliked by someone. Not disliked as a goal. Chasing disapproval is just rebellion, still steered by other people's reactions. Disliked as a consequence, the unavoidable cost of being a real person with real values in a world that often prefers you smaller and more agreeable. So audit your own ledger tonight. Name one choice you made this month mainly so nobody would object. Found one? That's the exchange rate. A piece of your life traded for quiet. And the full price of that trade is steeper than it looks. Because the alternative to being misunderstood is a life performed. Understood by everyone, approved by everyone, and lived by no one. Reaching the end and discovering the entire production was staged for spectators who were barely paying attention. Being misunderstood isn't the failure state of an authentic life. It's the cost of admission, and it's astonishingly cheap compared to the alternative. So, retire the correction tour. When someone misreads you, ask one question before you launch the defense. Is their version of me mine to manage? It lives in their head, shaped by their fears and their history, their task. Always was. Which leaves the objection that stops everyone. Doesn't choosing yourself mean ending up alone? The opposite. And this is the paradox that closes the argument. The philosopher's endgame was never isolation. It was connection between equals, contributing instead of auditioning, being genuinely useful instead of merely pleasing. Watch the mechanism. The approval seeker can never be truly met because there's always a performance standing in the way. Only a free person can actually be known. You cannot truly belong to anyone until you first belong to yourself. So this week, in one relationship, swap a performance for a contribution. Say the honest thing. Offer the real help. Drop the act for a single conversation and feel the difference between being liked and being met. Then the fear finally goes quiet, right? Not really. The alarm is ancient. You will feel the flinch at disapproval for the rest of your life. Freedom was never the silence of that alarm. Freedom is hearing it ring and choosing yourself anyway. So here's the pocket version for the next flinch. First, let them. Let them misread you, disapprove of you, and write whatever story they need, their task. Then, let me. Let me act on my values, keep my word to myself, and take one step that's mine. The young man lost the argument and won his life. Every seat in the house was empty the whole time, and the stage was always yours. Step off it, go live.